करते हैं. A very warm welcome to everybody here to this session on the East Pakistan tragedy revisited, contemporary concerns. This is an event which we host every year in the hope that people will remember what happened to our country in 1971. And as usual, I will begin with the verses penned by Siddiqi when he heard about the fall of Dhaka on the 16th of December 1971. That is the romantic in me. Nasir wrote, "Tarke ताल्लुकात पे रोया ना तू ना मैं, लेकिन ये क्या के चैन से सोया ना तू ना मैं." That is a reflection of contemporary concerns. And then he wrote, वो हम सफर था मगर उससे हम नवाई न थी, कि धूप छाँव का आलम रहा जुदाई न थी, अदावतें थी तगाफुल था, रंजिशें थी मगर बिछड़ने वाले में सब कुछ था, बेवफाई न थी। अदावतें थी तगाफुल था, रंजिशें थी मगर बिछड़ने वाले में सब कुछ था, बेवफाई न थी। कभी ये हाल ये दोनों में यह थी वो हालत, कभी ये मरहला जैसे आशाएं न थी। This has been sung very beautifully by Quaid-i-Azam. Let me see that the loss of East Pakistan was a monumental catastrophe which struck at the heart of Pakistan. Some people later said, there were some cynics who said that we were perhaps well rid of that part of the country. Analysts tend to single out people as responsible for the tragedy. Many analysts and scholars and academics have done that. But actually it was the result of many factors which accumulated over a long period of time. However, I think that the unusual physical configuration of our country was an important factor. Quaid-i-Azam, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, in his wisdom, understood that. And it was perhaps his understanding. The great Soviet Union dissolved in 1993, and a period of oligarchy and extreme political and economic distress followed what remained of the Soviet Union, that is now the Russian Federation. And then there was the traumatic collapse of Yugoslavia between 1990 and 1992. As you know, Yugoslavia had been considered a great venture, a model of cultural and religious integration, but it collapsed. Czechoslovakia split into two in 1992, but there was no bloodshed, and therefore it was called the Velvet Divorce. And South Sudan, more recently, gained independence in July 2011 after a referendum in Sudan and after hundreds of thousands lost their lives. A very strong secessionist movement in Nigeria, but it was called the Republic of Biafra, but it was thwarted because of the fact that there was one single territory involved. However, these examples which I have given are very small comfort for the lost of East Pakistan. But the secession of East Pakistan was not an open and shut case. Its effects have lingered on. And to consider those concerns, we have organized this seminar. The purpose of this gathering is not to apportion blame to anybody. We have 4 distinguished speakers whom I have the privilege to introduce. The first speaker, we will go in the reverse order of seniority. The first speaker is Mr. Zafar Shafique, who is a businessman, a very prominent businessman, and he is also a member of the governing council of this institute. He is a very active member, and I give him the floor.
I would like to thank Dr. Masuma Hassan, chairperson of this institute, for providing me the opportunity to present my views in front of the members and guests at this prestigious institute. The separation of a part of the country is a complex process that cannot be fully understood through economic analysis alone. We must acknowledge the interconnectedness of economic, human, and emotional dimensions in shaping the aftermath of such significant events. Now it's again the same from Hamsafar by Nasir Durabi. वो हमसफर था मगर उससे हमनवाई न थी कि धूप छाँव का आलम कहा जुदाई न थी अदावतें थी तगाफुर था रंजिशें थी मगर बिछड़ने वाले में सब कुछ था बेवफाई न थी बिछड़ते वक्त उन आँखों में थी हमारी गजल थी वो जिसको कभी सुनाई न थी. The dramatic nature of the separation of any country involves a profound and often deeply emotional disruption to the social, political, economic and cultural fabric of the nation. The separation raised questions about the identity and cohesion of Pakistan as a nation. It sparked debates about the challenges of maintaining unity in a diverse country and with distinct linguistic and cultural differences. The loss of East Pakistan in 1971 was a traumatic and transformative event. The loss of East Pakistan in 1971 was a traumatic and transformative event. It reshaped the geopolitical landscape of South Asia and left a lasting impact on the national psyche and the challenges of maintaining a united nation. There were certain grievances from East Pakistan. Very briefly, the economic grievances of the people of former East Pakistan centered around, number one, resource allocation and economic disparities. One of the major grievances was related to the allocation of economic resources. East Pakistan felt that a disproportionate share of the national budget was being allocated to West Pakistan, leading to economic disparities. Number two, jute export earnings. The complaint was that the earnings from jute exports were often used to finance development projects in West Pakistan. Number 3, lack of representation in economic decision making. The economic policies and development plans were perceived to be in favor of West Pakistan, leading to a frustration and a sense of economic marginalization. Number 4, economic opportunities. East Pakistan faced challenges in terms of employment opportunities, leading to a perception that the region was not getting its fair share of job opportunities and economic development projects. Now it comes with significant economic consequences for companies, institutions, and the people from Pakistan. My intention is to limit myself to the significant economic consequences. After the separation, Pakistan faced various economic challenges, including the loss of significant portion of its population, productive assets, and industrial capacity. A separation may lead to the disruption of established trade routes and economic relationships, affecting the flow of goods and services between the newly independent entities. This separation led to economic disruption, including displacement of business and international trade contracts. Agreements with overseas companies were disrupted as the territory required to be redefined after the separation of the eastern wing. This even resulted in the termination of international contracts. Letters of credits for imports established from West Pakistan with the condition of shipments to East Pakistan faced a situation of material in the high seas and vessels reaching Chittagong or Chattogram, but payments due from the companies in Karachi. Severe losses were observed in the profit and loss statements of the companies here. Then we have the cases of abandoned properties. During the war of 1971, there were significant population movements and property displacements. Many individuals from West Pakistan left Bangladesh, abandoning their properties. Abandoned property is a post-independence problem affecting properties abandoned by many during and after the War of Liberation. To make provisions for control, management and disposal of such property, the President of Bangladesh promulgated on 28 February 1972 the Bangladesh Abandoned Property Control, Management and Disposal Order. There were also cases of abandoned business. There were significant economic and industrial disruptions and as a result, some businesses owned by individuals from West Pakistan were left abandoned. These abandoned businesses including industrial enterprises, banks and commercial ventures. Some of the sectors in which Pakistani businesses were involved included jute, textile and various industries. After the creation of Bangladesh, the government took over many of these abandoned properties and businesses. Some were nationalized and others were placed under new management. There was also a division of economic resources. The division of economic resources, including infrastructure, industries, and natural resources, can be complex. Disputes did arise over the allocation and ownership of shared assets, potentially impacting the economic stability of both entities during the early years of separation. We have an interesting example of tea imports. We used to pay in the local currency, but we are traditional tea lovers. Pakistan had to use its foreign exchange in US dollar funds after 1971 to purchase tea. Loss of potential market for Pakistan origin products. The potential loss of Pakistani products in the region of Bangladesh was a real and immediate consequence of the separation. The economic impact included the loss of markets for Pakistani products in what was formerly East Pakistan. Loss of economies of scale. The breakup of larger economic entity resulted in the loss of economies of scale that existed when resources were shared. Divided entities faced challenges in achieving efficiency in production. The loss of Eastern Wing market created destabilization to industries which had significant sales to East Pakistan. Loss of industries. Investments were encouraged in Pakistan by government through Pakistan Industrial Development Corporation, PIDC, Pakistan Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation, BICIC, and Industrial Development Corporation of Pakistan (IDBP). Isfahani family, Afrikawala brothers, and Azamji family were pioneers of industrialization in the region. Azamji Jute Mills was set up by Azamjis, Pakistan's foremost industrialist group and one of the wealthiest families in the country. Azamji Jute Mills was the largest jute processing plant located at Narayanganj. The Azamji family eventually built it into the largest jute mill in the world, where approximately 25,000 workers were employed. Karnafuli Paper Mills, a paper pulp and paper manufacturer in Chittagong, was established in 1951 by Pakistan Industrial Development Corporation. In 1964, it was sold to Dawood Group. After the independence of Bangladesh, the company was taken over by Bangladesh Industrial Development Corporation. Kohinoor Chemicals, Tibet brand, suffered as a family at the end of 1970, and both their prime properties and businesses were lost. This group was the owner of a large soap factory, and combined with the production of East and West Pakistan, they were the largest in soap manufacturing in Pakistan. Kohinoor Group lost their battery cell plant, Chanda brand, which was incidentally the second largest in combined Pakistan and the largest in East Pakistan. Now I will turn over to the economic ramifications of business abandonment. What was the impact on West Pakistan? The abandonment of business in East Pakistan resulted in significant losses for the companies, shareholders, and individuals involved. Their impact extended beyond the immediate stakeholders, affecting the economy and common people in West Pakistan in several ways. Number one, economic contraction. The loss of business in East Pakistan led to an economic contraction as a portion of the country's consuming class was lost. Number two, unemployment. Business closures resulted in unemployment, particularly in those companies which were concentrating on products destined for East Pakistan. Number three, investor confidence. The abandonment of business eroded investor confidence both domestically and internationally. Consumer confidence, economic and political uncertainty resulted in lower purchasing patterns of the consumers. Financial sector impact. The financial sector experienced challenges due to the losses incurred by business. Corporate groups operating in both regions of Pakistan secured loans for purpose of expansion. The funds were either invested in industrial units in East Pakistan, or raw materials and packaging supplies were procured in Karachi and transported to Dhaka. This was a loss to the corporate sector since the loan had to be repaid. The next is navigating economic shifts. Now, opportunities for economic growth. While there are economic disadvantages associated with the separation of a country, there can always be opportunities for economic growth. The specific consequences depended on how well the separation is managed, the policies implemented by the new entities, and how effectively the new markets are secured in the geopolitical and economic context. While the separation resulted in the loss of a market in East Pakistan, it also presented opportunities for Pakistan to explore new markets and trade partnerships. Pakistan had to diversify its trade relationships and adapt to the geopolitical changes in the region. Over time, both Bangladesh and Pakistan have developed their own economic identities. Bangladesh in particular has experienced significant economic growth and industrialization. While there may have been challenges for Pakistan, the long-term resilience of both nations in their economic pursuits has been evident. Textile business is a very important factor. Pakistan reoriented its textile industry. This involved restructuring and adapting to the new market conditions, including exploring new opportunities. After the separation of East Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh in 1971, the textile industry played a crucial role in the economic development of the newly independent country. Pakistani textile specialists contributed to the growth of Bangladesh textile industry. Pakistani textile specialists brought valuable knowledge and expertise to Bangladesh. This transfer of technical know-how included insights into manufacturing processes, quality control, and innovations in the textile technology. Pakistani investors and businesses collaborated with Bangladeshi counterparts in joint ventures and investment projects within the textile sector in Bangladesh. This collaboration brought in capital, technology, and management expertise. Economic reallocation. With the separation of East Pakistan, the economic resources that were previously shared between East and West Pakistan became more concentrated in the remaining West Pakistan. There was an improved focus on West Pakistan. The absence of East Pakistan allowed the government of Pakistan to concentrate its efforts and investments more effectively in the development of West Pakistan. Views from Bangladesh. The views of common Bangladeshi people towards Pakistanis today are complex. There is also a growing recognition of shared cultural heritage and a desire for stronger ties between the two countries. In the end, I must emphasize that the perspectives on the separation period, but also the subsequent decades. Additionally, economic development is a complex and multifaceted process influenced by various factors, including governance, policies, and global economic and regional conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Zafar. Mr. Zafar Shafique, I should also add, is Chief Executive Officer of Paradise International Group of Companies based in Karachi. As you just heard, he spoke about the effects of economic effects for companies, institutions, and the people. The next speaker is Dr. Farhan Hanif Siddiqi. Dr. Farhan Hanif Siddiqi is Associate Professor and Director in the School of Politics and International Relations at Quaid-i-Azam University, Islamabad. He used to teach in the Department of International Relations at the University of Karachi. But for some reason, he decided to shift to Islamabad. Farhan has worked as Research Fellow at the Middle East Research Institute in Erbil, in Iraq. His research interests are on nationalism, ethnicity, conflict resolution, foreign policy, and the strategic dynamics in South Asia. He is the author of a very famous book, The Politics of Ethnicity in Pakistan, the Baloch, Sindhi, and Muhajir ethnic movements. And he has also published recently on introducing international relations, concepts, theories, and practices. This book has been published by Oxford University Press. Farhan will speak on homogeneity versus hegemony, fault lines in Pakistan's nation-building experiment.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Dr. Masuma, and also for inviting me here for this very important seminar. I was here last year as well, and what I'll do over the next 10-15 minutes is speak about the fault lines in Pakistan's nation-building experiment. First, a few quips about how I see nation-building. So, the nation-building experiment in Pakistan is no exception to it. In my estimation, it is about centralizing elites, manufacturing homogeneity, or what we call simply as unity, through hegemonic practices. And these hegemonic practices are premised in manufacturing myths, symbols, histories, cultures, tradition, with the intention of homogenizing the ethnic and social diversity that exists in society in the service of nation building. And this is exactly where the rub is, because the more centralizing elites pursue this hegemonic project of nation building by denying ethnic identity or by denying ethnic diversity at the societal level, the more tenuous and the more controversial becomes the relationship between the state and ethnic groups in society. And this is what exactly transpired in East Pakistan. So East Pakistan is not a very good example, in fact a horrible example of nation building, but a very good example of nation destroying. So if we have to learn the right lessons in terms of nation building from East Pakistan, I think the first major imperative is to be entirely self-reflective and self-critical. So I refer to General Qamar Bajwa's statement last year in his final address to the nation. And he said that East Pakistan is not a military failure, but it has been a political failure. And if that is the mindset of our military and political elites, if you will, about what unfolded in East Pakistan, or diverting attention as we normally do when it comes to assessing what happened in East Pakistan or what is happening in Balochistan today, for example, and divert criticism towards our external enemies, absolve ourselves of all responsibilities, or if we criticize the politicians or the military for whatever ethnic tragedy that is unfolded or is unfolding in the country, then I think this element of being self-reflective and self-critical, which is absolutely essential if we have to do nation building, it's a far-fetched idea. So in my estimation, East Pakistan was a collective failure of the military elites, of the political elites, of the bureaucratic elites in holding the federation together, and the discriminatory policies that were pursued that entrenched and that contributed to the peripheralization of the Bengalis. And we can take an institutional analysis, we can speak about the structural exploitation within the government and institutions and of how that contributed to the marginalization or the separation of East Pakistan. But I'll take a more ideational normative approach. So the question that I raise from an ideational lens and connect it with the nation building experiment relates to the question of defining who we are. Who is a Pakistan, or what is a Pakistan? And from there on to understand, maybe if we can, why the nation building experiment in Pakistan, in East Pakistan and Pakistan of today, unfolded the way that it is. Now, when we speak about the identity of Pakistan from an ideational lens, now too often I think we are engaged in a debate over the secular and the religious foundations of the Pakistani state. And we often refer to Jinnah's August 11 speech, where he argued that you're free to go to your mosques, you're free to go to your temples, that has nothing to do with the business of the state, and that everyone is a Pakistani citizen. And in that estimation, and the civic nationalism that Jinnah was basically arguing for was, everyone is free in terms of their personal religious fears, but in terms of national identity, it's the Pakistani citizen, your Pakistani identity, which is important in that sense. And this is a celebratory moment, especially for the liberal community in Pakistan, who celebrate the speech by arguing that it was the secular identity that Jinnah basically advocated. Then we have the Objectives Resolution of 1949, which is celebrated as laying the foundation of the religious foundations of the Pakistani state. But if you read through the Constituent Assembly debates, and if you read through the resolution, Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan was absolutely clear when he said that Pakistan, we do not want a theocratic form of government in Pakistan. And he argued that the theocratic form of government is alien to Islamic history and Islamic civilization. So that is not what he argued for. Now, I think what we have not done sufficiently is to look at the very conservative, even very authoritarian orientation of Jinnah and other elites when it came to the question of ethno-cultural expression. And that's where the divergence is. And again, what I argued earlier, this nation-building experiment of imposing homogeneity from the top through hegemonic discourses is the exact experiment that Jinnah basically pursued. And when that happened, ethnic and linguistic diversity within the society was denied. So I'll just quote Jinnah on the language question. So I've quoted Jinnah on the August 11th speech. Let me quote Jinnah on the issue of the language question in Pakistan. So addressing the Bengalis, this is what he said, and I quote, he said, they proceeded to demand, they being the Bengalis, proceeded to demand that both Bengali and Urdu should be the state language of Pakistan. Make no mistake about it, there can only be one state language if the component parts of the state are to march forward in unison, and that language, in my opinion, can only be Urdu. And that speech in 1948 was the first instance, evidence, if you will, which gave rise to the alienation within Bengali ethno-cultural ranks, and that is where Bengali nationalism, so to speak, that's the moment where Bengali nationalism emerged. And again, meaning it was interesting from another point of view that in denying Bengali their language, we were doing it against a majority of the country. Right? So the Bengalis were the majority part of the country, but as we know, political power was concentrated within the minority, and that was another paradox, if you will, that we can look at. Jinnah also termed provincialism as a curse. And again, during one of his speeches in 1948, he said that this is, he actually equated it with an evil. And he said that provincialism is such an evil that we must rid ourselves of. So if we compare, the argument that I'm making is, so if you compare Jinnah's liberal credentials, when it comes to the question of religion and secularism, I don't think it balances really well or very nicely when it comes to the issue of ethnicity in Pakistan. That's a very conservative Jinnah that we see on the question of ethnicity. Which brings me to the question that I formulated originally. What or who is a Pakistani? How do we define ourselves? So let me take up two key identity markers of the Pakistani person. One cultural, which is the Urdu language, and the other religious, which of course has to do with Islam. So if I make the argument that a Pakistani person is a person who is defined or who is understood, or is a person who speaks Urdu as their mother language, if that's the definitional criteria that I put forth, then I think we run into a severe definitional paradox. Because our survey indicators tell us that as a mother language, Urdu is spoken only by 7% of the population of this country. Right? So if we impose this definitional criteria, this homogeneity of, Pakistani is a person who speaks the Urdu language, then we leave 93% of the population out. Right? So again, the question for the audience is that how are we better off in terms of the nation building experiment? Are we better off in terms of normalizing this diversity that is there in Pakistani society, or are we better off rejecting it, which is a lot of people see as negative in terms of nation building? And the same goes for ethnic groups, meaning not only Pakistan. So take up the Baloch. If I put up the question, who is a Baloch? And the answer, a Baloch is a person who speaks the Balochi language. That would be completely wrong, because the Baloch speak multiple different languages. They speak Brahmi, they speak Saraiki. There are other many dialects besides Balochi that they speak. So Baloch can be a Balochi by speaking different languages. Take up the Pashtuns. They speak the Pashto language, but they speak also the Hindko language. In Afghanistan, they speak the Dari language. So multilingualism is a key feature of the national identity of states. It's also a key feature of the cultural identity of ethnic groups as well. And I think that has to be taken into account. Let's take up the other identity marker. Religion in this case is Islam. So the question, who is a Pakistani from a religious point of view? And the answer would be that a Pakistani is a person who is a Muslim. Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. Right? And then the question becomes, so what about non-Muslims in this country? Are they not Pakistanis? So if we take up the Ahmadis, who the constitution says, according to the Second Amendment 1974, are non-Muslims, does that also mean that they're non-Pakistanis? That they do not have any rights and obligations as other Muslim citizens of this country do? So again, making identity, and the other religious minorities as well, including Christians, Parsis, Hindus, so they can be non-Muslims, which is absolutely fine, right? But they're also Pakistanis, and it's the Pakistani identity, the civic form, I think, which is absolutely important to understand. So what is happening on the religious front today, just let me conclude. I think in terms of nation building, so I think the bad bit which is happening today in terms of Pakistan, I think that, and it's a problem, is I think we are in the midst of normalizing majoritarianism. We should be having a debate about normalizing diversity, but we are actually in the midst of normalizing majoritarianism. Majoritarianism is simply when the majority fears the minority. So you have the Muslim majority in Pakistan, which is 97% of the population, fearing the non-Muslim minority, which is only 3%. Or if you narrow it down to the Ahmadis, only 0.09% of the population. You have the Hindu majority, more than 80% of the population in India, fearing the Muslim minority, which is only 10 to 11%. Does not make sense to the rational mind. So I think this majoritarianism, it's a very big challenge to Pakistan today, in the future. And it's a challenge because it is being normalized by the mainstream political parties, whether it's the PTI, whether it's this PPP, whether it is PMLN. And the evidence is the proliferation and normalization of the blasphemy discourse. And I think if it continues the way that it is, this normalization, this proliferation, this widespread acceptance of the blasphemy discourse, then I think there is far less optimism on the nation building score sheet, and the trends for the future are that we're headed towards nation destroying as opposed to nation building. And this is where I end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Farhan. I'm sure there are many people who will raise many questions on what you have said. So will I at the end. You have raised issues. I don't know whether we are so engaged as a people about who is a Pakistan. I don't think many of us have thought in these terms, who is a Pakistani. We are Pakistanis, we are Pakistanis. But you have introduced many factors into it. It's my very great pleasure to introduce Dr. Moonis Ahmed. Moonis Ahmed Sahab is Dr. Moonis Ahmed is a member of our institute. He started his, shall I say, research career in this institute? 40 years. 40 years. In 1983 to November, he worked here as a researcher. And since then, of course, he has risen to great academic heights. He is the former chairman of the Department of International Relations, former Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, and Meritorious Professor of International Relations at the University of Karachi. Moonis has taught for about 40 years and has been considered by AGC as the best teacher. He is the author of many books, monographs. He has edited 15 books on different themes of international relations. The list of his books is very long, so I will not read it out. And he has done a lot of research with very many think tanks and academic institutions all over the world, which is also a very long list. You know, he's Asia Fellow. Also, he has spent some time at the University of Dhaka, the London School of Economics and Political Science, at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, and the Willy Brandt School of Public Policy, and various other institutions. His recent book, which Routledge has published, is The Challenge of Enlightenment, Conflict, Transformation, and Peace in Pakistan. He hasn't brought the book with him. I don't think he has yet received a copy of it. He has the flyer, and he is going to speak on the plight of Pakistan's forgotten citizens in Bangladesh. Over to you, Moonis.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masum Hassan. Also mentioning about the beginning of my research career in Karachi from Pakistan Institute of International Affairs. And of course, I would like to honorable, the participants here, particularly Zaida Mustafa Sahiba and Mr. Ihtisham Arshad Nizami, who has done a lot of work on Standard Pakistanis. He is here, and I used to consult him as far as the theme of my presentation is concerned, which is plight of Pakistan's forgotten citizens in Bangladesh. Why they are called as forgotten citizens? Have we forgotten them? Have we abandoned them? Is it termed as a bitter legacy of 1971? Is it a closed chapter? Many questions may be raised as far as this topic is concerned. Standard Pakistanis. What is the legal status of standard Pakistanis in Bangladesh? Because there are many opinions. Second is why Pakistan has refused to repatriate the remaining number of standard Pakistanis in Bangladesh. By the way, there are still 66 camps in Bangladesh. And the largest camp is in Mohammadpur, which is called as Geneva camp, and I also visited that camp, where you have 45,000 people. Languishing, subhuman conditions. And then how the reservations in Pakistan impeded the return of Pakistan's forgotten citizens. There are two notable publications here which I consulted. The first is by Naimul Muhim. The title is The Urdu-Speaking Community of Bangladesh, Forgotten Denizens, which means occupants, or putative, which means assumed citizens, published in the MRA International Law Review Journal, volume 37, issue 4, 2023. Then there's a book which has recently been released by a friend of mine who is a professor of political science in Rajshahi University, but now is based in Canada. And the title of his book is Does Citizenship Matter? An Empirical Look at the Biharis in Bangladesh. Now, they are called as Biharis, they are called as standard Pakistanis, they are different names, but the fact is basically that it's an issue which one school of thought, they believe that is dead. There is no such thing as standard Pakistanis. The second school of thought, they believe that is still there. So I will discuss how this humanitarian issue has been lingering since last 52 years, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, it is there. Past efforts were made for the repatriation of standard Pakistanis, and certainly efforts. First of all, the 1973 August agreement between Pakistan and India, concurrence of the Bangladeshi government. April 1974 agreement, tripartite agreement between India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. According to that agreement, Pakistan agreed to accept. Numbering around 500,000, but only 173,000 of them were able to make it. And then, of course, from time to time, in small batches, non-Bengalis, they are also called as non-Bengalis or two-speaking community, have been coming to Pakistan, and the last one was in January 1993, when the Nawaz Sharif's government, the first Nawaz Sharif's government was there. 372 or 373 Islamic Pakistanis arrived in Pakistan, but in Punjab, in near Channu. The idea was basically that the Nawaz Sharif government had agreed to repatriate the remaining 300,000 Islamic Pakistanis and to settle them in Punjab because of the reservations in other provinces, particularly in Sindh. But then his government was dismissed by the president in April 1993 and it was over. Then suddenly in 1988, before the demise or the death of General Zawala, an agreement was signed by the government of Pakistan and the World Muslim Congress, which is called as Quaid-i-Azam, that resources will be committed, mobilized, and the resources, financial resources, will be used for the repatriation. So that was during the last days of Zawala, whereas in 1978, the government of Pakistan, and suddenly there was martial law, government passed the Pakistan Citizenship Amendment Ordinance, which refused to grant nationality to Urdu-speaking community living in Bangladesh. So the chapter was closed. But then Zia, during his last days, his government signed an agreement with World Muslim Congress, whereas whereby the government of Pakistan committed 250 million rupees, World Muslim Congress 50 million rupees, and Lord David Annals, a member of British Parliament, donated $50,000. That money had to be used, and after more mobilization resources for the repatriation of Senate Pakistanis. But then the process got stopped. And now the situation is that the money is there with Habib Bank Limited, and the amount has risen because of the profit and all that to 2.5 billion rupees. But after 9/11, the account was frozen because the US suspected that the money was being used for terror financing and things like that, although it was not true. So that is how the plight of settled Pakistanis augmented day by day. Pakistan's President Pervez Musharraf, former president, when he visited Dhaka in July 2002, so he made a delegation of settled Pakistanis, and he expressed his sympathy, but he said that no, we will not be able to repatriate them. That is how this misfortune has impacted as far as the settled Pakistan is concerned. The agreement which was signed between Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, that agreement agreed, as I said earlier, to repatriate. There were three categories: those who were the government servants, meaning the North Bengalis in the then former East Pakistan, those having relatives here, and the third were the hardship cases. In 1976, Pakistan's Foreign Secretary visited Dhaka with a list of 25,000 hardship cases to to negotiate with Bangladesh. But then hardly 5,000 of them were able to make it. Legality of said Pakistanis. There are two opinions. The first is that it is the responsibility of the government of Bangladesh. And for that matter, they basically quote the verdict of Supreme Court of Bangladesh 2003 May and May 2008. The Bangladesh Supreme Court, where the stranded Pakistanis or the non-Bengalis had approached that they were living in camps in miserable conditions and they should be given the nationality of Bangladesh. They don't want to go to Pakistan. So the court accepted their petition and it ordered the election commission, like it was ordered by our Honorable Chief Justice yesterday, to issue the election schedule. So he ordered the election commission, the Supreme Court ordered the election commission to enlist those living in camps that they should be allowed to vote, give their voting rights and then of course the nationality. But it was subject to one thing. Only those who were born after December 16, 1971, they will be eligible, not before. Now, this is 2023, 52 years have passed. Those who were 20 years old in 1971 are now 70 years old. Those who were 30 years old are 80 years old. So it basically means that 2/3 of the original, they have expired. So that is something which the Foreign Office of Pakistan used. When a petition was submitted in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, calling for the repatriation of stranded Pakistanis way back in March 2015, the Deputy Attorney General of the Government of Pakistan, on behalf of the Foreign Office, presented the copies of the verdict of Supreme Court of Bangladesh 2003 and 2008 and said that we are not responsible. They are Bangladeshis. But that is not true. That is not true. The thing is basically that whenever those who are living in camps, whether they are 300,000, 340,000, whatever the number is, the fact is basically whenever they go for their passport, whenever they go for employment, whenever they go for other facilities, they are not granted because of their address. They don't have a permanent address. Those living in camps, like the Geneva camp in Mohammadpur and other camps, these are basically, these are not permanent residences. Their residences, their shops and the properties were basically confiscated by the newly formed government of Bangladesh in 1972. And they were displaced. So they took, refuge in the camps. But the government of Bangladesh is not interested. So that is their plight. And the plight, basically, the way out is, I think I'm done. The plight is basically that there are two types of, people over there who are living in camps. The first type of people who are still looking forward go back to Pakistan, particularly of the older generation and some of the younger generation. The second type, they said, we have nothing to do with Pakistan. Now, to the extent that now they celebrate December 16, which is a victory day for Bangladesh, as their day. They don't celebrate Pakistan Day anymore. But the problem is basically that unless they are given the proper nationality documents, unless they are given the passports, and they are not given because of their address, which is of that. And certainly there are mafias over there who want to grab land, grab the land of the camp, which is a very prime land, and in other parts of Bangladesh. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, in 2019, she promised to standard Pakistan, the non-Bengalis, that the government of Bangladesh will construct apartments or flats for them, so that they can be moved from miserable, unhygienic conditions by living in camps. But it is only for political assumptions. And those who have been given voting rights, it is also because of the fact that they can vote for the Awami League and all that. So to sum up, I think it is a bitter legacy as far as Pakistan is concerned. The curse of those languishing in the camps since last 52 years, and the curse basically cursing Pakistan that despite their loyalty, when 3 million Afghans can be accommodated in Pakistan, and look what they have done in Pakistan. When 2 million Bengalis can live in Karachi and elsewhere, why can't we, as loyal, Pakistanis who gave sacrifices for their motherland in 1971, what is our fault? And it is a double jeopardy that they migrated in 1947 from India to East Pakistan, and again many of them were repatriated. That was second migration. So that is something which is deep down in their mind, and I think it is because of the curse that Pakistan has not been able to settle down. That whatever issues we are facing in Pakistan, whether these are economic issues or political issues, is basically because of the fact that it left almost half a million of its unforgotten citizens in Bangladeshi camp. The way out is basically that the camps, that's not a permanent place. 52 years, that's a long time. 3 generations. So the money which is lying with the Heavy Bank Limited, 2.5 billion rupees, needs to be, the government of Pakistan should take measures for unfreezing that amount after 9/11, mobilize resources so that if they cannot return to Pakistan, at least they can have an honorable and a dignified way of life in Bangladesh. I think that is the solution, so that Pakistan doesn't carry the baggage of 1971 till the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moonis. You mentioned Lord Annals. I remember during the movement for restoration of democracy, many meetings were held in our house because my husband was a leading figure in that movement. And in one meeting, Lord Annals also came. And Benazir Bhutto Sarwa used to attend those meetings. So he said he wanted to meet her. And so a meeting was arranged between the two in a separate room outside the meeting hall. And he pleaded that these stranded Pakistanis, or however you want to describe them, should be brought over to Pakistan. And she was quite adamant. I think the concern was that it would create some kind of demographic change. Because no matter where you settle them, in the Punjab or any other province, they would come to Karachi. And her concern was that they would not be acceptable to the local population here. However, it is very sad. The plight is very sad, and you have spoken so well about it. The next speaker, the last speaker, is Professor Dr. Akbar Zaidi. He is the Executive Director of the Institute of Business Administration, Karachi. Dr. Zaidi has had a most illustrious academic career. He is a renowned political economist, and he has taught for almost 4 decades in Pakistan and abroad. He is a political economist, but I believe that his first love was history, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of his education was completed at the University of Cambridge, but he also was educated in other universities of eminence in the United Kingdom. Dr. Zaidi's name is associated with many renowned organizations. He has taught at Columbia University, Johns Hopkins University, at the University of Oxford, and he has been associated with many organizations like the UNDP, like the World Bank, and DFID, the Aga Khan Foundation, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. He has written prolifically, and he has a lot of books to his credit, articles as well as chapters in books. And his recent book, entitled Making a Muslim, Reading Publics and Contesting Identities in 19th Century North India, was published by Cambridge University Press. Dr. Zaidi will speak on economic causes and consequences of the secession of East Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masuma Hassan. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. At the outset, I should probably apologize for what I'm going to say, because it's going to be unpopular opinion, unpopular perspectives. It's going to be a slightly different take on what has happened in 1947, 1971. The tragedy of Pakistan, or the tragedy of East Pakistan, or as Dr. Masuma Hassan said, the catastrophe of Pakistan, or of East Pakistan, in my opinion, is not 1971 but 1947. I think this union was doomed from the start. There was absolutely no way, and I think in your introduction you mentioned numerous countries which broke apart, but none of them was separated by 1,000 miles in between. When we talk about Yugoslavia or the Czech Republic or Soviet Union, any other country that you could think of, they are all contiguous, close by, and so on and so forth. But Pakistan, East and West Pakistan was a union which was completely doomed from the start, for lots and lots of reasons. And I think Mr. Zafar Shafique correctly spoke about Mr. Sohrawardi and Mr. Jinnah agreeing to a greater Bengal, and even Gandhi, and you're absolutely right, Dr. Masuma Hassan, and even Gandhi and Nehru originally were slightly open to it, but then in 1946, when the Calcutta riots took place between Hindus and Muslims, Gandhi said it's not going to happen, and that's when this plan was set aside. So West Pakistan is one of those events. The making of Pakistan is when you buy one and get one free. So we got East Pakistan free, and I think that is where things started to going wrong. We were never united. There is no such thing as a united Pakistan. And if you look at, I'm a historian and I'm also a political economist. So I've looked both at the historical side and I'll talk a little bit about the economic side. West Pakistan and East Pakistan were very, very different, completely different. Language, culture, history, politics, in every single way. There's absolutely nothing similar about. And you could say Islam, but there are 55 other countries which are not going to join Pakistan, or West Pakistan to become Pakistan. Moreover, it was West Pakistan which had severe prejudice against East Pakistan. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the 1971 war, and I think Masuma and Moonis are as well. And the narrative behind it. I mean, there was racism, there was the issue of language, which Farhan spoke about. Mr. Jinnah, actually in Dhaka University, speaking to students of East Bengal, as it was called at that time, in English, said that you have to speak Urdu to be a good Muslim and good Pakistani. You can't not speak Urdu, although he was challenged at that, but nevertheless. In terms of their religion, Bengalis were considered to be recent converts from Hinduism. Their color, they were considered dark, black. They don't look like British Pakistanis from North India, from Hindustan. They were short in height. So that was something that was considered very derogatory. उनको बुज़दिल कहा गया, डरपोक कहा गया, और ये सर सैयद अहमद खान ने कहा था भाई वो बहुत खिलाफ थे बंगालियों के और बहुत उनको बुरा समझते थे। तो एक एरोगेंस थी जो हिंदुस्तानी मुसलमानों में थी, very strong arrogance. And also, this is 1947. Actually, this is 1877 when Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan was writing. And then you have 1947, and then you say expect two countries like this to work. It's not going to happen. Marriages or whatever unions don't happen that way. So this is the foundation of a country which was doomed from the start. And given the treatment by West Pakistanis, mainly military generals from 1950, women's participation rate in Bangladesh is much higher, women's literacy is much higher, women's mobility is much higher, economic growth is much higher. Today, Bangladesh has a higher GDP per capita than India or Pakistan. So there was a time not long ago when Pakistan was doing very well economically, but no longer. So Bangladesh has now become an independent, mature economy. Is still one of the least developed countries, but its per capita income is growing faster, and per capita income is much better, higher than Pakistan. So this is a question which some historians and economists would ask: is whether 1971, and we don't talk about the fact that maybe a few 100,000, or according to the Bangladeshi, 3 million people were massacred. But after that, there's no question about it that Bangladesh was better off than had it been with West Pakistan, because we see the consequences of, even if you look at Balochistan or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Saraiki area, which have been with Pakistan for 76 years, they still continue to be extremely underdeveloped, except central parts of Punjab and certain parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and parts of Karachi. There's this model of development which is very unequal. It's geographically unequal, ethnically unequal. So the question that one asks as a historian and a political economist is whether the separation, the freedom of Bangladesh, East Pakistan, Bangladesh, whether that now one can look back and say that, look, this is what we suppressed in the first 25 years. Now we can see the genius of the Bengali people who have moved far ahead, who've developed, who are moving faster than other countries in South Asia. So it's a question which one can't answer and say, yes, this is why it's happened. But I think one can suspect or presume that's one reason why Bangladesh has done much better than what West Pakistan has done, is because for the first 25 years, हमने उनका गला दबा के रखा था, हमको सांस भी नहीं लेनी थी, leave alone development. So I'll stop here. And as I said, my views are slightly different from a lot of other people who read and write and talk about East Pakistan, but I think the real catastrophe and tragedy was 1947, not 1970. 1970 was a genocide, but that's a different thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar Zaidi. I will now open the floor to questions. जी अब पहले अपने आप को इंट्रोड्यूस कर दें।
हमारे पास
नहीं मैं इनको दे रही हूँ।
I'm Quaid-i-Azam, member of the civil servant. I'm sorry, my throat is there's a problem. My question is from the second and the last speaker. Pakistan didn't learn from the experience of India. Very early days, India started its constitution making, and here it wasn't taken in the end. Even while Quaid-i-Azam was not alive, the process of constitution making had started in India, and it completed within 2 years or so. In the Indian constitution, there is they accept Sindhi as a national language. For example, there are about 16 languages, national languages in India, and though Sindhi is not a language of any state of India. It is spoken by people who migrated from here. Then Sindh is mentioned in the Indian Indian anthem as well. So we have to learn from the experience of India and not even the experience which we endured in 1971. So this is my observation as well as question from Mr. Current class speaker. Thank you.
जी बिल्कुल इसी तरह था। और अगर इंडिया की अर्ली हिस्ट्री आप देखें तो जो पहला इम्पल्स था नेहरू का वो बड़ा अथॉरिटेरियन था कि लिंग्विस्टिक स्टेट्स ना बनाए जाए, ठीक, कि जो गुजरात स्टेट बनना था और बाकी जो साउथ इंडिया में स्टेट्स थे, तमिलनाडु, और he had an authoritarian tenure in the very beginning. लेकिन पॉइंट यही होते हैं कि एलिट्स फिर सीखते हैं कॉम्प्रोमाइज करना। So he granted those states that were needed there. तो फिर गुजरात का एक स्टेट, राजस्थान का स्टेट, मराठी स्पीकर्स का अलग स्टेट, राजस्थानी स्पीकर्स का अलग स्टेट। तो इंडिया में जो पॉलिटिकल ट्रेडिशन है, वो पॉलिटिकल कल्चर है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू एथनिक ग्रुप्स, डिस्पाइट कश्मीर, डिस्पाइट द प्रॉब्लम इन सिक्स, जो मणिपुर में जो वायलेंस अभी आपको नजर आया थोड़े अर्से पहले, जो पॉलिटिकल कॉम्प्रोमाइज का पॉलिटिकल कल्चर है वो डेवलप हुआ है पिछले सालों में। तो इनिशियली 14 स्टेट्स अब 28 हो गए, लेकिन वो अथॉरिटेरियन जो प्रोजेक्ट है जो हमें कश्मीर में नजर आ रहा है वो भी मैनिफेस्ट है, ठीक। तो और जिस तरह आपने लैंग्वेजेस की बात की, अब दोबारा मेरा ख्याल है हमारे जो पॉलिटिक्स है और हमारे जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है उसमें बड़े पैराडॉक्सेस हैं। आर्टिकल 251 क्लॉज 3 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का ये कहता है कि रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस आप प्रमोट कर, तो अगर आपको सिंधी पढ़ानी है, पश्तो पढ़ानी है, बलोची पढ़ानी है, पंजाबी पढ़ानी है, कश्मीरी पढ़ानी है, आप पढ़ा सकते हैं ये लैंग्वेजेस। लेकिन जो ऑफिशियल रिकग्निशन है वो उर्दू के आगे नहीं जाते, व्हिच डजंट मेक सेंस। तो ये मेरे ख्याल में जो है वो हमारे इन पे एक बड़ा अथॉरिटेरियन और एक बड़ा रिग्रेसिव किस्म का एटीट्यूड है एथनिसिटी और कल्चर के हवाले से।
आरिफ साहब
मेरी अर्ज ये है कि आप में से किसी ने भी उस दौर का तस्करा नहीं किया जो 3 मार्च सन 71 से लेके दिसंबर तक पाकिस्तान आर्मी ने ईस्ट पाकिस्तान के अंदर जो कत्ल वारत मचाई है, जो बर्बरियत की है, उसकी वजह से मैं कम अज़ कम, मैं उस ज़माने में अमेरिका में मुकीम था, तो मुझे बड़ी शर्मिंदगी होती थी क्योंकि उससे पहले के चंद सालों में मैं एंटी वियतनाम वॉर में बहुत एक्टिव था। तो लोग कहते थे ये कैसे आप एक तरफ तो उनकी हिमायत करते थे और यहाँ आपकी आर्मी जो है वो, तो हमारे तरफ से बाद में कोई रिमोर्स नज़र नहीं आती। हमने उसके बाद जो मरहूम टिक्का खान साहब हैं जो कि उस ज़माने में बंगाल में बड़े मशहूर थे कि वो बड़े जालिम और जाबिर किस्म के गुजर और बंगाल थे, उनको बेनज़ीर ने आते ही पंजाब का गवर्नर बनाया। तो ये इससे ज़ाहिर होता है कि हमने कुछ सीखा नहीं। तो मुझे अफसोस है कि आप लोगों ने किसी ने उसके ऊपर कोई तस्करा, कोई बात नहीं।
चलिए नहीं सीखा हमने। अब और किसका सवाल है?
Sir, my question is,
नहीं, मैंने आपको आंसर given you the floor. इनको I will come back to you.
Okay.
इनको दें।
Should I ask?
Yeah.
Farhan sir, first of all, you should be appreciated for your critical wisdom and for being critical thinker. And I'm happy that in the public sector university you are not following state-centric curriculum, which is based on that. So, and your students are really blessed. I want to know on what basis an unelected Governor General decided for national language of Pakistan. In 1948, he went to Dhaka and ordered in a dictatorial manner that Urdu and only Urdu will be national language of Pakistan. Well, Bengalis were demanding that if you are going to make Urdu national language, then Bangla should be along with. So, Pakistan is a post-colonial society. Someone says free or independent, so well, he or she has right to think like that. But Pakistan is a post-colonial society, and Jinnah himself introduced a dictatorial nature of governance, government and politics in Pakistan. He appointed Alfred Charles Turner as Finance Secretary of Pakistan in 1947. He appointed Archibald Rowland, Economic Advisor of Pakistan. Archibald Rowland has served in Viceroy Council as Economic Advisor. And he appointed K.S. Jeffries for re-establishing Pakistani bureaucracy. So, we have colonial legacy. So, on what basis then Pakistan came into being? There were 3 or 4% of people who speak population. So, on what basis an unelected Governor General decided?
This is what I said during the course of the presentation, that the nature of the nation building experiment as instituted generally, traditionally by states and by centralizing elites, it usually follows a very, hegemonic, it's usually a very hegemonic project. So the question for Pakistan, as was stated in the comment earlier, that we've had this tragedy, we've had the disintegration of the country and a failure to learn the lessons from it, despite the fact that this has happened, I think that in itself is a tragedy. Besides Pakistan, look for evidence in the United Kingdom. What's happening there? Meaning years and years of centralization, and now you have Scotland wanting to become a separate independent country. You have the Catalonian region in Spain demanding the same. So the problem is, and the answer to your question is that central elites think that if they impose this unity from the top, that if they have these hegemonic projects, the society in essence can stabilize. And that never happens. And that is also now happening in the developed parts of the world, in the global north, right? And that's the issue.
Are there any questions from this side of the house, please? Masha. And one question was, you always asked him.
I want to, but I think I'll ask this opportunity to clarify one thing, which I think that 75 years later, we still are misquoting Jinnah on August 11th. Because in August 11th, you quoted part of his quote. The last part of his quote, or in that same context, he says, a Hindu will cease to be a Hindu and a Muslim will cease to be a Muslim in name. And then, what is the bigger misquotation is the context. Because the context and how you have quoted it, with all due respect, and many have quoted him, was also understood by Mountbatten at that time. So when he read the newspaper on August 12th that Jinnah had made this statement, when he came on August 14th and opened the assembly, the Constituent Assembly, and welcomed the Governor Generalship of Jinnah, he spoke that these words were inspired and that made him think of Emperor Akbar the Great, and that this is the secular regime that will come in Pakistan. To that, Jinnah himself, on record, in his speech, responded and clarified that position. And I will quote Jinnah, because this part of the quote is never given in this context. On August 14th, 3 days later, he says,
the tolerance and goodwill of the great emperor Akbar showed to all non-Muslims is not of recent origin. It dates back 13 centuries ago, when our prophet, not only by the words but by the deeds, treated the Jews and Christians handsomely after he had conquered them. He showed them with the utmost tolerance in regard and respect for their faith and beliefs. The whole history of Muslims, whenever they ruled, is replete with those humane and great principles which should be followed and practiced by us. So, is Quote, if anything, the one question I would leave it to that, is that it is not quoted in its right context. The Misaq-e-Medina that talks about one ummah, that includes the Jews, is exactly what Jinnah was referencing. And this quote keeps getting misquoted in the secular context. And it's very sad because the evidence is there. You can go to the National Assembly website, download the national debates, and read it for yourself. Jinnah responded to Mountbatten's Ghalat Fahmi. Unfortunately, 75 years later, we're still quoting August 11th improperly. So I'd like some comments in respect to that. Thank you.
Any other comments?
You see, the presentation was not about the August 11th speech. The presentation was about what he said in his Mullah. right? So, what he said in East Pakistan. His views on the ethno-cultural expression form the basis of what I felt and what is out there in terms of how Jinnah viewed ethnic identity or cultural identity. So you can have this debate about whether he preferred a secular system or a religious system or how he interpreted it. That's not part of the argument that I was making. He was absolutely clear that provincialism is a curse. He was absolutely clear that provincialism is an evil that had to be done away with. And that is what caused the alienation in East Bengal. That's it.
My name is Rabia Mushtaq for Geo.tv. I have two questions from right now. One for Dr. Moonis. So, आपने HPL के पास जो funds हैं 2.5 billion, I believe you spoke about that. Do you think they'll ever be unfrozen, and if they are, do you believe they'll be used to repatriate the Pakistanis that we have in Bengal, Bangladesh right now? And my second question is for anybody who wants to answer. When we talk about 1971, also I think there should be some mention of the stateless Bengalis living in Pakistan as well, because they are also deprived of the rights that we as Pakistanis have. Yeah, so those are the two questions. Thank you.
No. She asked about the amount. Well, I think it's a long, it will be a bit मुश्किल काम है कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान जो है उसकी बिल है नहीं है कि वो अमाउंट को अनफ्रीज करवाए, जो कि 9/11 की वजह से फ्रोज, ऐसी कोई बात ही नहीं थी, मगर उन्होंने कर दी मुशर्रफ के ज़माने में। और फिर किस तरीके से वो अमाउंट और फिर इसके अलावा जो बाकी रिसोर्स मोबिलाइजेशन से वहाँ के लोगों की वेलफेयर के लिए उसको इस्तेमाल किया गया। यू ऑल्सो आस्क्ड अबाउट द स्टेटलेस बंगालीज। वेल, I mean, they are basically living. They've been living here since last 40-50 years. Even there are two types. The first who in 1971 opted for Pakistan. Bengalis opted for Pakistan. So, and the second, those who came crossing over India to Pakistan in the 80s, late 80s. So, I think when Imran Khan was the Prime Minister, he was the one who raised this issue, and he said that the stateless Bengalis should be given the nationality. One reason why the Bangladeshi government is not expelling Biharis or non-Bengalis from the camps, that if they take that step, then Pakistan will deport around 2 million of Bengalis who are here, particularly in Karachi. But they have been living here since, and they have their CNICs, they have their other documentation and things like that, and various political parties they support their rights to obtain citizenship.
But they are deprived of a lot of rights.
Like the extended Pakistanis or the Biharis have been deprived of their rights for living in camps. But the Bengalis are not living in camps.
The Bengalis here, and of course the police harassed them getting money.
That's true.
Yeah, my name is Samna. I'm from University of Karachi from the School of Law. And my question is that, as you rightly said, that the right of self-determination is very much prevalent in the global north as well. But my frustration is that in our context, there is one like Punjabi dominant culture that we have in our TV, in every discourse, So how to de-hegemonize our state now? How to, start doing this discussion where we study civil-military relationship? I mean, how many universities in Pakistan are actually doing this discourse, that how to study, how to talk about this issue, because it has become so sensitized and so securitized. I think that we are all afraid of talking about this issue, and recently this frustration has been shown in this house as well, that we haven't talked about it because we are so afraid. And I think that was because I was not from that era. But whenever I think that we are always afraid of talking about this relationship, and we haven't discussed the role of India as well. India has openly at that time that they used R2P responsibility to protect the Bangladeshi people. And while living in Pakistan, can we deny the role of India? I think even if we see the cricket World Cup recently, how they have treated us, in every which way they try to exploit the fault lines that you discussed in our country that is now so prevalent. So I just want to...
To whom are you addressing this question?
I think to Mr. Sir from Islamabad. Yeah.
Can I just respond to one part of it? You can blame India for everything you want, but for the first 25 years, 47 to 70, the economic exploitation that was taking place of East Pakistan was not by India. It was by West Pakistan. Businessmen here, people here. Mr. Jinnah was not an Indian, although he was an Indian, but the statement which Farhan spoke about language, culture, rights, there's no India involved in this. You could make an argument that in the war from the 3rd of March, as Arif said, till December, India played a role, but that's only towards the end. They did not create the discrimination, they did not create the economic exploitation, and when we keep blaming India for everything that happens in Pakistan or East Pakistan, we are denying the ability to understand what the problems are, to recognize them and to fix them.
Yeah, but just to brief ma'am, it's just okay, in proportion we can give some, percentage to India because India has always been a hostile country. And obviously I'm not saying that 100% India is responsible, but so far we have seen the animosity with Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you, you made your point. Aapko de? Inko de?
Thank you very much. My name is Iram Ashraf. I'm from the UK, Swansea. The question I have is for Dr. Zaidi and Dr. Siddiqi. But before that, I'd like to thank Dr. Masuma Hassan for arranging this panel. And I'm so thrilled that sitting next to me are very young Pakistanis, because that is the one issue I've always felt when it came to the story of the creation of Bangladesh, is that the children of Pakistan have no clue what happened. So I finished my schooling in this country and I left. But when I was in school, the only thing I knew about Bangladesh was everything ended well with Pakistan. Pakistan was created, and then India divided Pakistan, and full stop. So exactly I can understand where this idea is, India's role in this. So the question I have actually stems from what Dr. Siddiqi said about the centralisation in the UK resulting in Scotland wanting its independence. Now the fact is we now in the UK experience devolution. So we have our own assembly. So I live in Wales, we have the Welsh Assembly, right? So Wales is not asking
for separation or secession at that time. Improbable, but for an identity. So this question which Farooq Saab asked earlier about the Indian languages. India at the time of independence had 15 states. Today it has 31 states. For us to change the name of the Northwest Frontier Province to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa took 67 years. So we still have 4 provinces which are unmanageable, cannot be administered. And we refuse to recognize that we need at least 12 or 13 states or divisions or whatever you want to call them. So I think that, and it's precisely what Farhan was also saying, that if you deny people, if you deny people from Hazara, the Potwa region, their language, if you deny people from the Makran, their identity, if you deny the Saraiki speaking people the right for them to express themselves in their language, then and Gilgit-Baltistan and everywhere, all over Pakistan, you'll have this problem of secessionism and your separatist movements. So that's one answer. It may not be it may not help because, as you're right, despite devolution, Scotland wants freedom. It won't get it, but there's a move to it, a proportion.
Namely, Shafique Shabab, student of historian. Respected speaker, you have briefly analyzed the situation. My question first, that you say they mention the stateless Bengali. Keeping in mind stateless Bengali also living in Assam province of India, which are refugees from the Bangladesh war to the Assam. About 40 million. They not give their citizenship and proper citizen right. Okay, yeah. Regime are also given the separated and founding a camp and just to repatriate. But that is a Muslim, 40 million. Sir, the second question is there, your economics, Zaidi Sahab economics, the analysis of that time, the raw material is there, huge is there, the factory is in West Pakistan. Now that is time, the in Bangladeshi government 47 or 40 billion economic. Our industrialists move their textile industry, garment industry, settle down their Bangladesh and become a huge quantity of that. Sir, or secondly, that Greater Bengal concept is to be actually fulfilled that time. This tragedy does not become happen. What is your opinion, respected speakers?
हिस्टोरियंस को जब वो पढ़ाया जाता है उनको एक चीज बताई जाती है, एक लफ्ज इस्तेमाल होता है जिसको कहते हैं काउंटर फैक्चुअल। वो कहते हैं आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि अगर ये नहीं होता तो वो क्या होता। तो ये जो आप सवाल पूछे ना कि अगर had this not happened, we don't know, you can't say anything, it's just speculation. So as social scientists, as academics, we look at the way things happened. So you can't say that if Greater Bengal would have, I don't know, Greater Bengal would have happened, maybe there would be no India, there would be no Pakistan, we don't know. So it's very difficult to speculate.
Now only one more question and I'm going to wind up after that because I also have to make my speech. Okay, देखिए आप पहले बोल चुके हैं। अच्छा, he's young, give it to him.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zaidi and I am a student of MPhil Political Science from University of Karachi. Sir, my question is from Dr. Moonis. Sir, if we look at history, in 1947, Pakistan got independence on the basis of a two-nation theory. And in 1971, the separation of East Pakistan, do you think that it actually denied the two-nation theory? Thank you.
I don't think so, because I'm not supporting or opposing two-nation theory. What I'm saying is that Bangladesh not been created, right? Why was it so that after 1971 it maintained its identity? It didn't merge with West Bengal because of religion. You know what I'm saying? That the Greater Bengal, which Bhashani and others, Swarwardi also advocated, that should have emerged after 1971. But it's not that religion was not a factor. Bengali nationalism, Bangladeshi nationalism. You know, BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, it goes for Bangladeshi nationalism. Bengali nationalism, that is Awami League's slogan. Right.
I will now wrap up this session. So many different arguments and thoughts have been put forward in this, I think, very interesting seminar which we have had. I want to give my views. First about the Urdu language. You see, when we, in today's context, talk about languages, we forget that Urdu was in fact the language of the struggle of the Muslim people in India. That struggle was conducted in Urdu. Maybe it was spearheaded from the United Provinces, UP Usfatpur. But that is how, and those were the terms, and that was the language in which the leaders, Muslim leaders of that time, thought and struggled. So when Mr. Jinnah went to Dhaka and he said, Urdu and Urdu only will be the language, national language of Pakistan. There was a reason for it. I don't think that he had the kind of prejudices against the Bengalis which Dr. Zaidi has so eloquently spelled out. But he had this political framework in which they had all thought and worked. And ultimately, the response of the Bengalis did get them to get Bengali become a national language of Pakistan. Also, there is this reference not only by Farhan but many people that only such a small fraction of the population speaks Urdu. So what? Everybody speaks Urdu. Everybody here can speak Urdu. Nobody says that you can have 10 national languages. All right, there is Punjabi, there is Sindhi, there is Balochi, there is Ravi, there is Hindko, whatever. But there can only be one national language in which you can conduct the work of the government. You can't simultaneously work in many languages on the files of the bureaucracy. So it's very, just a minute. So it's very, these are arguments which are very frequently put forward. I'm just giving my views, you don't have to agree with me. Also, I think that we are discussing what happened at that time in the context of today's environment. Many people have said an unelected Governor General. Please tell me in which country of the world the Governor General has been elected. Please tell me. Which country of the world has there been an elected Governor General? Of course he was unelected. He was the Governor General according to the political dispensation at that time. He chose to be the Governor General. Mountbatten wanted to be the Governor General both of India and Pakistan. But Mountbatten was so anti-Pakistan, and there is evidence in all the papers in which Mountbatten, the argument that he gave for the acceptance of Pakistan, one of the arguments to the Congress, was that it would not last. Pakistan would not last as a state. This is stated documentation. So, realizing that, Quaid-i-Azam Jinnah decided to be the Governor General himself. It was a perfectly natural choice. That is what I think. So I think that we should not try to contextualize in today's world, in today's academic and political way of thinking, what happened at that time. Because at that time, circumstances were very different. Then there has been this question of provincialism. Mr. Jinnah was against provincialism. When he talked about provincialism, he wasn't saying that there should be no provinces. He didn't say that. He didn't say that all the provinces of Pakistan were bad or that they were not able to. What he meant was that the negative aspects or the negative aspects of which come up with provincial hegemony should not, be supported. That was, I think, what he really thought. These are my views, and in looking backwards, it's very easy to criticize. Governing Pakistan, making it run as a state in 1947 was no easy task. It was a Herculean task, considering, and there are, Akbar would know perhaps, that there are files in the National Archives in Islamabad which specifically spell out how India tried to blockade Pakistan economically in every sense of the word, And so we must give credit where the credit is due. I think an open mind is very welcome. Yes, there should be critical thinking. Yes, there should be dissent. Nobody could support dissent more than I do, and that is why we have these events and these seminars in which everybody can express their views. So thank you very much. I want to thank the speakers, Dr. Zaidi, Farhan, Zafar, who presented such a fine paper, and Moonis, our former research officer. Thank you very much, and you are all welcome to a cup of tea downstairs.